Hello Cariad, I am taking this charity bag swag, these two men's shirts, and turning it into this fully reversible jacket. Let me show you how. I'm starting by putting the two shirts wrong side together. No, that's a lie, they're right sides together. I knew what I meant, that's the way I pronounced it. So one's a long sleeve, one's a short sleeve, and it makes no difference because it's all going to be cut. Now, these shirts are about the same size, give or take just a little bit, but it won't matter too much by the time I've finished. I will make it fit. So lining up just around the collar stand. I think that's what it's actually called. I don't think I've even made that up. And just putting a few pins just along, and again I'm going to crop this so it doesn't even matter if one's a different length lengthwise as well. So they're now pinned down by the buttons and around the collar. I'm just going to line it up and I'm going to crop both shirts at the same time. So this is probably the scariest bit. But if I cut one short, I cut them both short at least. So they're lined up. I've put a pin where I want to crop it to. And I'm just going to draw a straight line from that pin to the centre seam. And when I say straight, fairly straight. And then from that centre seam to the back. And it is just about getting it as flat as you can. It's not going to be perfect, but that's okay. And it is unlikely that the shirts will be the same either side. So again, I've got that pin mark and I'm just going to draw a chalk line through and then cut straight the way across. So just crop it all off there. So that's both shirts cropped together, and then I'm just going to cut the collar off as well. So underneath the main collar line, where there's still a stitch, I'm just going to cut above that line. And I am cutting these separately, but closely. And there we go. So all the pins can now come out and I will work with both pieces separately, although I am going to crop the long sleeve to match the short, but I'll do that when it's unpinned and back the right way. So now I need to cut the long sleeve to match the short sleeve. I'm actually going to measure this for once. So just, it will all get tidied up when it goes together at the end. So that's 9.5 from the shoulder seam. So I'll do the same here. And I'm just going to do a straight line, both sleeves together. And just cut that through. And there we go. So now it's decoration time. So I'm going to add some patches in strategic places. I don't know why I say strategic because I'm just going to throw them on. I'm going to add ruffles to the sleeve and a ruffle to the bottom. But first of all, I'm going to take all the buttons off. Now, the other shirt has got presser studs, so that will be a slightly different approach. But for these, I'm just going to use the seam ripper, slide in behind the stitch, and not actually cut it, apparently. For the black and white side of the shirt, I'm going to use these bright fabrics. So I've got a little bit of zebra, some lime green with some navy and some proper funky. And I'm going to keep these ties because I'm going to use those. But I'm going to cover the two button stands. Is that what they're called? I don't know. Where the buttons were and where the buttonholes are. I'm just going to cover in strips of patchwork on both sides. So this will become a tie front jacket rather than a button through. So I'm just going to cover all those up and then add some patches as well. And then we'll go through and make the ruffle for the bottom half. So I've put some patches along the buttons and the buttonholes and randomly across the front. So I'm going to pin all these into place and then stitch around each one. And I'm probably going to do a zigzag full on applique stitch, certainly on the more linen patches that I've put on. So I'll pin, I'll sew, and then I will decorate the back in the same way. So the first shirt is done, patches front and back. And with these, oh, I need some WD-40 there. With these, I've done a close zigzag stitch around the edge. So I lined it up with the very edge of the patch. So the stitch goes either side to catch all of the edges, just because some of these fabrics will fray. Now with the other shirt, because it's got a pattern to it, I'm going to do less patches and I'm going to use denim, which I will sew with a straight stitch close to the edge so that when it gets washed, the edges will fray, giving it a slightly distressed and very different look. So this shirt has got the press studs that I need to take off. I'm only going to take off this side, which has got the raised bit, because that will get covered over. So obviously there's probably a gadget to do this, but I like to find my own way. It's probably not particularly safe. But I've got this little screwdriver from the sewing machine. I'm just going to ease it away all the way round through the front. And then if you go onto the reverse, and then same thing again, but this should now get the little teeth out. There we go. So there's a couple of little holes, but that's going to get patched up anyway. So I'm just going to do that with the other two, and then I will start patching. So as I did on the opposite shirt, I've just patched down over the buttons and some bigger patches, which I'm now going to sew around. All the patches are now sewn onto this shirt as well. But before I put the two sides together, I'm just going to do one final thing. I was going to use this tie for the ties on the jacket, but I'm actually going to use it around this shirt as decoration. So I'm going to sew it along the patches that I put over the buttons. Just a bit of extra around the collar and down the other side. And then I've got some cotton tape that I'm going to make the jackets for the ties for the jacket with. So I'll sew that on as well. So I'll just sew that behind for now. It will get sandwiched between the two pieces when they get sewn together, but one step at a time. Add the decorative strip, add the ties, and then I'll put it all together and show you what I mean. So that strap is now sewn all the way up through the buttons, around the back of the collar, and I just use a zigzag stitch over that. And then I've sewn the cotton tape behind or onto the back of the other shirt, so that the tie is there. I did say I was going to do two, but I've gone with one right in the centre. So I'm now going to put these two shirts wrong sides together and sew all the way round. So up the buttons, around the collar and down the buttons. And I'm going to leave it there to start with and then turn it through. And then I'm going to add the ruffle peplum base bottom bit to make it longer. So I'll sew all that together first, and then I will show you what I've done to create that second half. Just before I start sewing these two shirts together, I'm going to just take the cotton tape and take it under so it's between the two right sides. So it's wrapped around, make sure it's flat, meet those 2 points back up, and then I'm just going to pop a pin just above it so that when you turn it through, the tape is in the right place and it's not caught in between the two layers on the wrong side. So our right sides together, take the thread under, make sure it's flat, and then I'm just going to sew along the whole edge, so from the bottom of where the buttons were, round the collar and down the other side, doing the same thing with the cotton tape on the other side, with a straight stitch as close to the edge. That is now sewn all the way round. There are a couple of things before I turn through that I want to share. Obviously, there are no mistakes in upcycling. There are just lessons to be learnt. And the lesson was very valuable here, and that is covering up the buttons. I should have left a seam allowance because I ended up having to sew through 2 patches and 2 shirts, and 1 row of patches was denim. So that was quite thick already, and then I had the cotton tape as well. So that was a little bit of a challenge just to get round, but I did. So that's gone all the way through. And then around the curve of the collar, before I turn it through, I'm just going to make some little cuts down to that stitch line just to help turn it through. So just a few little tiny snips, just so it lies a bit better. Now it is going to be quite bulky, which is why it will take manipulation and the hot iron, but it's totally doable. So I'm going to turn it through. I will line up the side seams to press it. I'll match up the pockets, and when I turn through, that cotton tape is now coming out onto the outside. So I will see you after a little ironing session. So I've manipulated and pressed the jacket. So I've gone all around the collar, down the edges, and then we've got the reversible element. There we go, so we've got the top half. And then we're going to add the peplum or the ruffle, whatever we're going to call that. I've taken a measurement from the corner at the front all the way around to the opposite corner. Can't remember how much it was, but I did write it down. And then I've made 2 lengths of patchwork for each side. So all the little cut-offs of fabric, easy for me to say, and then a denim one as well. Now these are longer than the measurement. Again, I wrote it down. I don't know, can't remember, but I wrote it down. And I'm going to sew right sides together all the way around, including along the top, but not completely. So I'll go from about halfway along, down the side, down the long side, the short side, and leave a gap on the top, probably on that bit there, because that's the cotton, so it will have less stretch, to then turn it through so that we've got a corresponding side to each side of the jacket. That is now sewn all the way around, and I've left a gap somewhere. I've left a gap there to turn it through. So before I do that, I'm just going to trim the corners. So just cut the corner off without going through the stitches, just to, again, take out the bulk when I turn it through. Trim off any really long bits. And then from that gap, I'm just going to reach through, pull it through the right way, reach in and pull it through even. So I'm going to give that a good press. I will close the gap just by pressing down the seam and doing a little top stitch, and then I will attach it to the jacket. So the measurement I took was 52 inches, and that's from the corner along the back to the opposite corner, and then I've made this 82 inches, so it's going to have a little bit of space to pleat. And I've just pinned one end, and I'm going right sides together on the denim side, purely to keep the continuity, that's where the raw edge will be on both sides, because it's going to be easier, I think, to sew through the jazzy shirt. So pin that end, and then run it down, and I'll pin again this end. And I'll try not to pin it upside down, because that could cause all kinds of problems. And then I'm going to find the halfway point of the run and the halfway point of the shirt. And I'm going to just do this by eye. So that's about halfway. And then between the 2 points will be about there. So again, pin. I need to make sure I get both shirt bits and the bottom. So pin there. And then again, the same thing. So the halfway point is about there, and the halfway point of the shirts is about there. So pin, and I'm just going to keep doing that until I get down. I mean, I could put the pins on this side and make life easier. Until I get down to a pleatable size. So halfway to halfway is about there. And this is where the shirt's not being quite exactly the same, just have a little bit of play and pull, just to get it about even. And then when I get to the point that I've just got a little bit, I'm just going to fold it to make a pleat. Now this bit of shirt has got a little bit extra give, so I'll pleat that separately and then just fold over and again pin. Making sure all the pleats are going the same way. So again, I'll fold the shirt separately, then I'll fold the ruffle and then pin that in place. Now again, there's going to be quite a lot of bulk to go through with the machine, so this could be fun. But it's all about the learning, and next time use cotton. So again, just once more, you've got the halfway point of the shirts, the halfway point of the peplum ruffle, run of fabric. So secure that and then make that into the pleat. I'm going to keep doing that all the way along, and then I'll sew a straight stitch all the way along close to the edge. I'll do 2, and because of the thickness I may be some time. That is now sewn on. Because I did right sides together on the denim, there's a nice pristine edge, but on the opposite side there's a few little frays and there's a stitch line and it's a bit raw here. So I've made a strip just out some of the cut-offs, which I'm going to sew across the top, so like I did around the collar, but it's a bit wider. I'm just going to lay it over the top of that just to encase it all in, take it all the way round, so that's got a nice clean finish as well. I was going to do the sleeves the same way as I did the ruffle around the bottom. However, whilst my grandma always said no one will ask how long it took, I'm not going to tell you how long it took, but I've been here for days. So instead I have made 4 separate, well I've made 2, I've got another 2 to go, sleeves. Now I've made them the same width as the shirt sleeve because it's quite wide, and I've just patched together 2 rectangles, and I'll do the same for the denim side, which I'll sew down to make a tube and then put onto the individual sleeves wrong side together, which means they'll both have a really nice finish. So I'll sew that down there, slide it on, sew it, and then that will hang down from that side. And then I'll do the corresponding one for the opposite shirt, which I'm going to do in a cotton denim, cotton denim effect. You'll see when I get there. Basically it's cotton that looks like denim. I don't know what that's called. And I'm going to put some patches on it in the shirt material just to give it that bit of contrast. And I'll do the same again. I will make the rectangle the same width as the shirt sleeve, wrong sides together, and then turn it through, and then I will sew or edge the bottom of both extra sleeves. This will all make complete and utter sense very shortly. I've sewn on the patches and turned it right sides together. I think I keep saying wrong sides together, which obviously I don't mean, so do as I say, not as I do. No, don't do that because I'm saying it wrong. Do as I do, not as I say. That's where we're going. I had to think about that far too long. Anyway, right sides together, and I've sewn down to make a tube. I'm going to keep it right sides together and move out the way the long jazzy sleeve. So I've just got that single layer of short sleeved blue shirt. And then I'm going to put the seam of the bottom that I've made with the seam at the bottom of the shirt. So just thread it over the top, line up those 2 seams, pin it all the way round, And because I measured it with a tape measure and everything, it lines up. So there's no need to pleat or pull or tuck in bits that are excess, because there aren't any. So pin all the way around and then sew it, and then when I turn it through, there will be a long sleeve which will be reversible to the opposite longer sleeve. I've obviously got some threads I need to cut off here, but that's a finishing up job. Let's get this sewn on first and then we're almost there. I think I can call this a design element rather than a error. So we'll gloss over it very quickly, but the jazzy sleeve is shorter than the denim sleeve. So rather than trim it, cut it, line it up and bind it as I was going to, I'm going to use this longer side because it's straight as well. I'm going to put a small hem, press it, and then I'm going to turn it up to the line so that there is an element of the reversible side on the jazzy side. So there will just be this tiny hint of denim edging around the jazzy sleeve. And that was always part of the plan. Honest. And here we have one finished, final reversible jacket with the ruffle, with the patchwork. From the front on the denim side, we've got this very, very subtle, snazzy bit of the funky fabric as the collar opens up. But on the other side, we have got the little touch of denim just on the edge of the sleeve cuff, both sides, but its own bit of funkiness going on there. You've even got a little bit of patch on this side as well, just to bring that denim side through. But there we go, 2 men's shirts, 1 reversible jacket, and no one will ask how long it took.